Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly, joined by Justin Godsey. This is the Real Sports Talk and Nation Sports Blog presents the 30 Clubs, 30 Previews MLB special. And Justin, the special is winding down as we approach our final 5 teams, beginning with the Cincinnati Reds today. And this is a team that last year won the NL Central crown, going 97-65 in Dusty Baker's 5th year as the manager of the team. It was the second time in 3 years that they made the playoffs, and they had the Giants on the ropes in the playoffs up 2-0, and then the Giants came back, won the next 3 games, and the Reds went home on a very bad note in October. So Justin, coming into this year, let's take a look at some of the moves that they made in the offseason as Dusty Baker enters his 6th year, and hopefully a season for Reds fans that will produce some better results in the playoffs than the last 2 times that they have gone to that level.
You know, the Cincinnati Reds relatively had a quiet all season, minus the addition of Shin-Soo Choo. You know, he was a part of that 3-team deal involving, you know, the Cleveland Indians and the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think Shin-Soo Choo is going to feel right at home with the Cincinnati Reds. You know, I've always had a feeling that, you know, Shin-Soo Choo was not going to be a full-time Cleveland Indians outfielder, because you know what? Well, who they brought in this year, they brought in Swisher and brought in Michael Bourne. And you know what? Shin-Soo Choo, yeah, he's a phenomenal outfielder. He's going to feel right at home with the Cincinnati Reds. Now, they really didn't get any more players other than that. You know, they went over to they signed a couple of guys who will more than likely become invitees up to the Major League roster when the rosters expand. You know, they did get veteran Miguel Olivo, who is a catcher, and you know what, this team does have Devin Mesoraco, they have Ryan Hannigan, and you know, Miguel Olivo will mainly start the season down at the AAA Louisville Bats organization as he will progress to get back up to the Major League level. They did get one of my favorite Giants, Emmanuel Burris. He's going to be starting the season down at the AAA level. You know, he doesn't really bring a whole lot, but you know what, he is very speed. He has a lot of speed on the base path, but you know what, he's just one of those guys that could add depth, you know, once the rosters expand.
Yeah, and a guy that they were able to re-sign that I think a lot of people haven't taken notice of was Jonathan Broxton. Aroldis Chapman, just a few days ago, they were working on him to try and be a starter. He will head back to that closer's role. And I actually do have some concern over Aroldis Chapman, but I'll get to that later on in this video. We'll begin breaking down the Reds behind the plate with Ryan Hannigan at the catcher's position. Last year, Hannigan played only 112 games. That's kind of been the problem throughout the course of his career, is being able to play a full season. He hit 274 last year, 2 home runs, 24 RBIs. I think he's a solid catcher behind the plate, but he's not the best hitter. He'll give you a respectable average, doesn't have a ton of pop. So, Justin, at the catcher's position, you also have Devin Mesoraco, as you mentioned. Mesoraco last year played 54 games, hit 212, 5 home runs, 14 RBIs. So Mesoraco is going to give you a little bit more pop, but a lower average. So overall, the Reds aren't deep in terms of hitting at the catcher's position, but overall, I think they have 2 pretty solid fielding catchers.
That also involves Miguel Olivo as well. You know, one of these guys, you know, one of them is destined just to fall off. I think it's actually going to be Ryan Hannigan. I think Devin Mesoraco, who's been up in their farm system for quite a while now. In 2010, Mesoraco played phenomenal. He played with the Louisville Bats. He played for the Carolina Mudcats. And, you know, this guy got about 13 home runs. He's going to get you some pop. You know, the highest he had was in 2010 when he hit, you know, 26 home runs, you know, in the early stages with the Carolina Mudcats. This guy has phenomenal pop. You know, 13 home runs in 2010 with a split season with, you know, the Carolina Mudcats, and also with, you know, with their AAA affiliate. And, you know, he's still an up-and-coming prospect, but overall, when you look at it, I think Devin Mesoraco is going to be a guy who they're going to keep long-term. And then as for Ryan Hannigan, you know, it all depends on his, you know, health ability, and it's just all depending on that basic instinct there. So, you know what, you know, he's not really in this value with his bat. He's like an average type of, you know, catcher, you know, 2 home runs, 24 RBIs last year. He can still improve. I'm not trying to shut anything down on him. You know, he has some experience. You know, 112 games last year, and in 2011 played 91 games. But you know, he still hasn't really impressed me a whole lot that he's going to be a long-term in the long-term books for the Cincinnati Reds. I think that Miguel Olivo, you know, he does. You know, he's coming over from the Seattle Mariners. He is that veteran guy, you know, with the young guys like Devin Mesoraco. You cannot go wrong, but I think Devin Mesoraco is more deserving at catcher than Ryan Hannigan.
Yeah, and he didn't show a ton of his power at the AAA level last year. I mean, he had like 12 or 13 home runs, but he didn't, coming up to the MLB level, we didn't see quite as much power. I think Mesoraco is someone that if he's given a full season, he can be someone that can hit you 10 home runs, at least at this point in his career. Beyond that, maybe he can hit 15 to 17 at some point. We shall see with him. Now, Joey Votto is going to be the starting first baseman, Justin, and what more needs to be said? Joey Votto, when he is healthy, is one of the best players in the game, if not the best player or the best first baseman in the game. His problem last year was staying healthy. He was an MVP candidate for much of the year, but injuries really killed him. He had 337, 14 home runs, 56 RBIs. I mean, just the problem was the fact that he was only able to get on the field for 111 games, and that was one of the biggest reasons why the Reds ultimately did not win 100 games, is because you have your best player missing a good amount of the season, about 50 games in the season that Joey Votto missed last year. So if he's able to stay healthy this year, you can only imagine what this Reds lineup is going to look like over an 162-game pace, because he is someone that's hit over 30 home runs before. He fell down to 29 in 2011, but I see about 34, 35 home runs over a full season and about a 320 average. He is just one of the best pure hitters in the game right now.
Oh, absolutely. Joey Votto, Joey Bats. I mean, this guy is phenomenal. You know, last year was, kind of a down year for him. He went down with injury. And you know what? He said, during the offseason he felt a little bit better, and he said he's going to give it a shot for the first time in his career with at the World Baseball Classic. He really didn't raise a lot of eyebrows, but you know what? It's healthy for, these injured guys, to step up their game a little bit and, improve on, the curing process. And you know what, Joey Votto, that's what he did. That was the main reason why he went over to play for Team Canada in the World Baseball Classic. And I like the route that, with World Baseball Classic is available. Even though it's every 4 years, there are some big injuries that do go down, during the off season with people getting surgery, with players getting surgery. And you know what, you gotta step up your game. So, the way that Joey Votto trained was go to the World Baseball Classic and really try to advance his hitting. But overall, when Joey Votto is 100% healthy, he is a phenomenal first baseman, plays great defense baseball. His bat is always there. Last year, well on his way to become an MVP, but, in 111 games, he missed out on a big portion of the season. And you know what, I think, in 2013, I don't think that injury is going to linger for him. I think he's going to have a healthy season. I think he's going to be a huge portion of the year, probably around 160, probably maybe only miss a couple of games. But you know what? This guy overall is a phenomenal first baseman. I have a lot of high hopes for him.
He's good in the field too. And you mentioned the World Baseball Classic, and I like that point because with Joey Votto, I think that is a good way for him to kind of get back into the flow of things. He missed a decent portion last season, so for him to have the opportunity to kind of get back into the flow of things, get back into the rhythm in the World Baseball Classic, even though he was back for the playoffs last year, I like that. Now, Todd Frazier and Jack Hanahan are two guys that could be potential backups over at first base, but again, those guys are going to be used at other positions. In Todd Frazier's case, Jack Hanahan will be the guy, if Joey Votto were to go down, that would step up over at first base, but he's someone that's also a backup at other spots in the infield. Now, over at second base, Brandon Phillips is going to be your starter. Brandon Phillips, a guy who I've long said as the most swag in the MLB. In 147 games last year, dipped to 281, hit 18 home runs for the third straight season, 77 RBIs. I want to see that average go back up, but I'm not necessarily sure it's going to. He had 300 in 2011, but prior to that, he was really a guy that was hit a 275, 280 hitter, and I just think to expect more than maybe a 285, 287 average at him, it's not very likely. He's going to give you a good glove. He's one of the longest tenured players with one team in the MLB at this point, so I like Brandon Phillips a lot overall, though, because he's going to give you that pop still. He's been extremely consistent both at the plate and in the field with his glove.
The definition of swag in Major League Baseball, that is Brandon Phillips. I don't say swag a lot, but you know what? This guy classifies that word. And Brandon Phillips overall is a phenomenal second baseman. He is getting up there kind of at the age where, his bat's not really going to be there. But, this guy continues with, a lot of people like really downing him sometimes throughout the year. He's always there. He's always hitting phenomenal, 18 home runs the past 3 seasons. He's always able to go out there and average you around that type of number. When you look at this year, I do expect his RBI total to go up a little bit more. From 2011, he had 82, and in 2012, he had 77. I still think that, his bat can still produce a whole lot more. I think his RBI count should go up this year. But, this is a guy who's going to go in and year out and get you a solid, 275, 281 bat. And overall, he's a phenomenal second base.
Yeah.
His defense is actually pretty solid. Overall, he's a great second baseman for the Cincinnati Reds.
Now, his backup is going to be Jack Hanahan, a guy who will be used all over the infield. Hanahan has been with a few different teams in his MLB career. He's been with Detroit, Oakland, Seattle, Cleveland. So he's been around in his MLB career, to say the least. Last year, spent the season with Cleveland, last 2 years actually, in 105 games with Cleveland last year. Hit 244, 4 home runs, 29 RBIs. So overall, he's going to give you a respectable bat off the bench. He can play second, he can play third, he can play first. So he's going to be valuable to this team, as is the starting shortstop, Zach Cozart, who in 138 games last year hit 246 with 15 home runs, 35 RBIs. The thing with Cozart is, in the minor leagues with the Louisville Bats at AAA, he was a guy that stole 30 bases in 2010. I want to see him get back to a level where he's a consistent guy that is taking off. Last year he didn't get caught any, but he only attempted 4 bases. I want to see him steal a little bit more, and I want to see him get that average back up, because throughout the minors he was at least someone that's going to hit over 250, and then in 2011 he was a guy that hit 310 at the AAA level. So I want to see him get the average back up. I like Zach Cozart. He's a pretty good young shortstop, but there are a few things in his game that I want to see him improve on.
Oh, absolutely. Zach Cozart, this is another guy who I've been following down in the minor league level. I'm a huge fan of watching, the Louisville Bats. They're always entertaining to see, because the Cincinnati Reds team has a phenomenal minor league system. And Zach Cozart just really brings it up, because Zach Cozart has been with the team since 2007 when being drafted, where he was with the Dayton Dragons, and just up and coming, improving each year. And, in 2012 we saw, the full-time Zach Cozart over at shortstop, really providing, with that power bat. I do expect his average to go up a little bit. It was a career low pretty much a career low for him at the average at the major league level, and I do expect that average. This guy is a career 270 hitter, including the minor leagues. This guy can go up there and get up to 270, 280, and that's where I really do expect from him. I do not expect for him to go up there and hit up in the 300s as of yet. I think that he should rely more on his power to get him out of dodge a whole lot of points. So overall, you're getting a solid shortstop in Zach Cozart. I like the backup a little bit too. Jason Donald, another guy who is up and coming guy in Major League Baseball, was with the Cleveland Indians, was with the Philadelphia Phillies. Really hasn't connected a whole lot.
No.
Jason Donald, another up and coming players that can really make an impact. Then you also have, like I said, you got Emmanuel Burris. He was with the San Francisco Giants. He's not going to get you on a lot of home runs. He's not going to get you a lot of RBIs. But what he does is get you great fielding abilities, and he's been a phenomenal fielder throughout his whole career with the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, Emmanuel Burris will bring you a very good glove. Jason Donald has some more versatility, though, because he came up as a shortstop, and then he also plays some third base. He can play second base. He's going to be the second guy off that bench behind Jack Hanahan, so I'm not sure how much time he's going to be. There was a time where people thought that he could be a starting third baseman or starting shortstop in the MLB. He's never developed into that. He was one of the bigger pieces in the Cliff Lee trade the first time that Cliff Lee went to the Phillies back in 2010. And with the Indians, I think that the thing that he was most famous for was being the guy that was called safe on Armando Galarraga's should-have-been perfect game. Other than that, he will steal you some bases. He has a little pop, hit 6 home runs at the AAA level last year, but at the MLB level, he's never shown a ton of pop or really a great bat. He can field well, and I think that that's what you're going to get out of Jason Donald. The guy over at third base who had a tremendous rookie season last year is Todd Frazier. Hit 273, 19 home runs, 67 RBIs. I think behind Bryce Harper, he was the second best position rookie player in the NL last year. Just had a tremendous overall season, and over at third base, I like him a lot for the future of this team. I think he is someone that, with the 19 home runs, kind of reached a peak last year in terms of what he's going to do early on. I don't think he's going to, even though he's going to get probably about 20 more games at least this season because he's going to be up for the whole year. I don't anticipate he's going to be someone that's going to hit 27 home runs. I think 22 home runs is right around where you can expect Todd Frazier to be. But I do think he can bring the average up a little bit, and he's just an extremely bright piece that adds on to a Reds team that has Jay Bruce, that has Joey Votto, a very good lineup that adds in just another very good young piece.
Oh, absolutely. Todd Frazier, I think what really kept him out of winning that, the Rookie of the Year last year was just his average. He batted .273, and Bryce Harper out hit him with the average. And, overall, Todd Frazier is a phenomenal shortstop. He's coming up through. He's still coming up. He played 128 games in 2012, and in 2011, he played in 41 games. And this guy does have a lot of promise. In the 2011 when he played in those 41 games, he was phenomenal. 6 home runs, 15 RBIs, and he's not going to steal you a lot of bases. I think the speed overall as a third baseman, it's going to slow down a little bit. But, Todd Frazier is not the speediest type of guy in baseball. But, he's going to steal you, about 2 to 3 bases on average a year. It's really understandable for him. But, this guy is good. It's a contact hitter. And, he could go out there and he's just going to supply you some power. We saw that last year with 19 home runs, 67 RBIs. I do expect those RBI counts to go a little bit. I think this is a guy who could potentially hit, 23 to 24 home runs with about, 89 to 95 RBIs a season.
I think 89 to 95 might be a little high. I certainly think he's someone that will reach 80 RBIs this year, but we'll see on that one. Ryan Ludwig is going to be his starting left fielder. Ludwig last year played a pretty solid season with the Reds, hitting .275, 26 home runs, 80 RBIs. Was really one of the steals of the offseason because he was a guy that in 2011 spent the season with Pittsburgh and San Diego and just really had an extremely disappointing year, hitting .237 with 13 home runs. Did have 75 RBIs, but he's another one of these left fielder types that if you expect too much, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you take him for what he is, he's a guy that's going to hit you .275, maybe .280, and then he also has the ability to hit 20, 25 home runs. Then you're gonna get a good amount of production out of him. He's going to hit you between 70 and 85 RBIs. So I like Ryan Ludwig a lot in this lineup. He spent time with the Cardinals. He spent time with the Reds, and the one thing is that he's most successful when the pressure is off him and when he's just one of the guys in the lineup that is just another piece. In the Cardinals lineup, you had Albert Pujols, you had Matt Holliday. In this lineup, you have Joey Votto, Jay Bruce, Brandon Phillips. So the pressure's off him, and that's what allowed him to succeed last year, and I think that's what's going to do a lot of the same this year.
I really watched a lot of baseball with the Cincinnati Reds. I really looked at Ryan Lubbock because everybody has this obsession with just going out there and just trying to get Ryan Lubbock because this is a guy who will year in and year out will get you about 20 to 21 home runs a year. Last year we saw a big high total for him with 26, with 80 RBIs, batted .275, and he did not just leave off at the regular season. He went into the playoffs against the San Francisco Giants and he killed us in the playoffs. He was really dangerous when he came up to the plate. When he came up to the plate, he was just a killer for the Giants. And I think that the Reds could have gone past the Giants, but it just came up a little bit short. And overall, without Ryan Ludwig's help, I think it wouldn't really be that close because Ryan Ludwig really carried a workload in that National League Division Series. So I understand the reason why the Reds wanted to re-keep him because his contract was up at the end of the year. They re-signed him, and it's going to turn out to be a great signing for him because this is a guy who, like I said, can go out there and can get you 21 to 24 home runs a year, somewhere around that criteria. So it's a great pickup for him. He's a veteran guy, but he is aging, and I think it's going to be a step-by-step type of contract that the team does to consider to keep on bringing him back.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with him. Now, Chris Heisey is going to be the backup in left field. Last year, Heisey, in 125 games, hit .265 with 7 home runs. Prior to that, in 2011, he hit 18 home runs. So take that for what it's worth. I think Heisey's a pretty solid fourth outfielder for this team. And in center field, they bring in Shin-Soo Choo as part of that Drew Stubbs deal. And Shin-Soo Choo is likely only going to be a guy that's in Cincinnati for 1 year because he has 1 year left on his deal. And then Billy Hamilton, who stole, 155 bases at the AAA level last year. That was prior to or the Double A level last year. That was prior the season prior to that. He stole 104 bases at the Single A level. So long term, he's someone that provides a pretty good bat. Hit 311 last year. Doesn't have a ton of pop, but I mean, you can't ignore those base stealing totals. They're ridiculous. I think sometimes once he gets to the MLB level, he's going to have to be a little bit more selective because he got caught 30 times last year. But when you're stealing 155 bases, I don't know how many people can complain. But going over to Shin-Soo Choo, he's a guy that in 155 games last year hit 283, 16 home runs, 67 RBIs, stole 21 bases. It wasn't that long ago that he hit 300 with 22 home runs in 2010, hit 300 with 20 home runs in 2009. So he's someone that can hit you for a 300 average. I think that you expect from him about a 290 average this season, again, moving to a better lineup than what he was in Cleveland. So I think you expect a 290, 285, 290 average, and then hopefully you can get about 20 home runs, 80 to 85 RBIs out of Shin-Soo Choo. Will be a solid season. If for some reason the Reds weren't in contention, then this is a guy that you could see potentially moved at the deadline, but I don't think that's going to happen because I think the Reds will be in contention.
Well, I believe this Reds team, they're going to win this division. That's just my spoiler off the back. But, I think that Shin-Soo Choo is going to be sticking around for a while. Not only 4 to 5 year-wise, but, a couple more seasons than I actually would have expected. Because I didn't even know this guy was actually on the trade block, to be honest with a lot of you guys, because that move really came out of nowhere, with the Diamondbacks. It was actually supposed to be the Diamondbacks and the Cincinnati Reds supposed to be striking a deal because Trevor Bauer with the Diamondbacks was just not getting along. He was not, was not really connecting the dots. The organization was not really happy with, Trevor Bauer's decisions, really ignoring a lot of stuff. The Cleveland Indians was a spot. And, the Cleveland Indians got involved when the Cincinnati Reds was like, we'll just try and add another team in. And that's where Cincinnati came into the fold. And that's how Shin-Soo Choo got landed here in Cincinnati. Last year, with the Cleveland Indians, I almost said Cincinnati there, but in 2011 he batted 259. I was hoping that he could come back in 2012 and really improve his, batting wise skills, and he did. He batted 283. Overall this guy is a 289 career hitter. And in this year I think that I think he's gonna go on a minor slump now. I have him batting 278 with about 14 to 13 home runs. I think the RBI count's going to go a little bit higher than his home run totals. But overall, you're getting a productive outfielder. Shin-Soo Choo is phenomenal on the base path, can steal you bases. 21 last year. I do expect 21 to 22 this year. I expect the same number from last year. But overall, you're getting a phenomenal outfielder. You cannot go wrong with Shin-Soo Choo.
And you can't go wrong with Jay Bruce either over in right field. Jay Bruce is a guy that in 155 games last year hit 34 home runs, which was a career high. He's been on a tear ever since 2009. He's gone up in home runs from 22, 25, 32, and 34. I think he pretty much peaked out at 34 home runs. I don't anticipate he's going to reach 40 at any point in his career, but he's a guy that's going to hit you 30 to 35 home runs. I think this year, for the first time in his career, I expect that with Joey Votto in the lineup for the whole year, Shin-Soo Choo, just improvements made to this team. I expect that Jay Bruce is going to be a guy that can get to 100 RBIs for the first time in his career. He's a pretty solid right fielder, and then he'll steal you bases here and there. So Jay Bruce, another tremendous option on this team out in right field.
Yeah, I love Jay Bruce a whole lot. His average, really disappoints me. 252 last year, 256 in 2011. This guy has all-star. He's an all-star. He does have that MVP type of bat. 34 home runs. But last year he really stepped up his game because with the injury of Joey Votto, you also had some help, with Ryan Ludwig, who played phenomenal last year. But Jay Bruce really took over the squad and really just was mainly that captain last year. Be like, okay, we need you guys to go out there and really just put your mind to the bat and just go out there and swing. And that was all Jay Bruce last year. Like Tim said, ran down his stats, 34 home runs, 99 RBIs. But you know what? In 2013, I do have a lot of high expectations for Jay Bruce. This is the guy that can go out there and hit you, 32 home runs a year. And that's where I have him around at 32 to 33 home runs a year. I don't think he's going to really exactly reach 35 this year. But if he does, big ups to him. But I really hope that he can really get in connection with the ball a little bit more and bring up that average, because this is a guy who can hit, 281. He hit 364 in 2008 with the Louisville Bats, and that was right at the prime of right at the prime before him being actually called up for a full season. Oh, in 2000 he actually put full season. I correct myself there. But his bat just is not always there. He just needs more average.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with him. Overall, this is a very good lineup though, with Joey Votto, Brandon Phillips, Todd Frazier, Jay Bruce. It's an extremely good lineup. Now, the rotation's pretty solid, too. I think Johnny Cueto is one of the most underrated players in the game. I think he's a top 5 starter right now. And Johnny Cueto last year pitched like a top 5 starter, going 19-9 with a 2.78 ERA, 2 complete games, over 200 innings. Ended the season with an oblique strain. That one was rough. But I think that Johnny Cueto has just become a tremendous overall pitcher. There was a time where him and Edison Volquez were considered neck and neck. These guys are going to be the future. And Volquez's career has gone in the other direction that Cueto's has. But, man, Cueto's become extremely nasty.
Yeah, Johnny Cueto is one of my favorite Cincinnati Reds players to this day. Last year this guy was just all in it for that Cy Young. It was really neck and neck for the Cy Young last year. With this guy, Johnny Cueto, 19-9 with a 2.78 average ERA. Phenomenal. I do hope that he can really continue on for great success. Edison Volquez is not there in the lineup. He's over there in San Diego. But, this guy's taking complete control of the starting rotation, and I like the way that Cincinnati is really using him as their ace.
Yeah, I do too. Now, Bronson Arroyo is a guy who's been in Cincinnati for a long time now, and Arroyo is... last year really had a bounce-back season after a rough 2011, and I remember criticizing him coming into last year. A rough 2011, he came back last year, was 12-10 with a 3.74 ERA. Now, I think Matt Latos, who I'll get to in a minute, I think Matt Latos is a better option at number 2, but what Bronson Arroyo is going to give you is a guy that from 2005 to 2010 pitched over 200 innings every season. 2011 he pitched 199, and then in 2012 was back over at 202. So he's going to eat you a lot of innings. And Justin, I think that that's good for a middle of the rotation type of guy. But Matt Latos is a guy who was 14-4 with a 3.48 ERA last year, and I really do feel like this year, as he settles in with the Reds, he's someone that I anticipate him getting that ERA down to more the 3.30, 3.20 type of area. So I think he is, once they get to the playoffs, probably going to end up being the number 2 guy.
Yeah, I agree with the overall depth and where they position these players in the pitching rotation. Bronson Arroyo, he fell off last year. He really didn't really impress me a whole lot. And in 2011, he really didn't raise a lot of eyebrows in Major League Baseball worldwide. Not in 2011, 2012, he was 12-10. Still really didn't impress me. But Matt Latos, going over to Matt Latos. This guy's phenomenal. In his first year with the Cincinnati Reds, 14-4 with a 3.48. I still think that any day right now, any day of the week, I'd take Matt Latos over Bronson Arroyo. I think that Matt Latos is a solid number 2, and no doubt should be number 2 behind Johnny Cueto. But Bronson Arroyo right now. He's on a decline right now in my books. He should be a number 3 right now. Matt Latos should be number 2.
Yeah, you should be. And then Homer Bailey is going to be the number 4 guy for this team. Homer Bailey is someone that last year was 1-0 with that's in spring training this year. He's 1-0. So he's been fairly successful in spring training record-wise. His ERA hasn't been impressive, but in the regular season last year had a 3.68 ERA. I feel pretty solid with Homer Bailey as a number 4 guy. He's never really ended up being the top prospect that I think a lot of people thought he was going to be with the Reds, but he's still pretty young. He's been in the MLB for a while because he was a reliever for the Reds, but he is someone that's made a pretty solid transition into being that back end of the rotation type of guy. And then Mike Leake is going to be your number 5 guy. Mike Leake last year had a disappointing season for me because in 2011 was 12-9 with a 3.86 ERA, then had some problems in the offseason. I think he got arrested for shoplifting. Imagine that, an MLB player needs to shoplift. In 2012, came back 8-9 with a 4.58 ERA, and he's someone, Justin, that I believe needs to have a bounce-back season this year. Not that 4.58 is intolerable and that it really matters because he's at the back end of this rotation, but I do believe he's a better pitcher than what we saw last year.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off with Homer Bailey first up before we get to Mike Leake, a guy who was a phenomenal pitcher. Last year just wasn't his thing. But Homer Bailey last year, there was something that went down during the season that people still do not give Homer Bailey credit. I'm really disappointed. I really praised this guy last year because I'm a huge fan of Homer Bailey. This guy threw a no-hitter. And people who watch Cincinnati Reds, you always think of Cueto, Bronson Arroyo, and Latos last year, but Homer Bailey faced off against the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think, and he hit a no-hitter. It was not, worldwide, it wasn't on MLB Network. They just saw highlights of it. He threw a no-hitter, but he did not get, the praise of Doc Halladay. This guy threw a no-hitter, and all that he got was like, okay, Homer Bailey threw a no-hitter. That really that really pissed me off last year. Homer Bailey overall, he's making that transition and he's coming back. This is a guy who was a top talented prospect. Really showed it down in his early days in the farm system around 2006, 2007. Making the transition up to the major league level. He had a couple of bumps on the road, but you know what? In 2012 and beyond, we're going to see something special out of Homer Bailey. Now, as for Mike Leake, yes, last year he ran into some trouble for some shoplifting. What I read was like a tag. He walked out with a tag, and apparently they arrested him for shoplifting. The pride of Arizona State, my Sun Devils baseball. This guy played phenomenal with the Sun Devils. Coming over to Major League Baseball, he really didn't spend a whole lot of time in the minor league system. He went straight up to the Major League level, where in 2010 he was 8-4. In 2011 he was 12-9. That was the season that we were all waiting for Mike Leake. And then in 2011 he went 12-9. 2012 he went 8-9, where that down year really happened with the shoplifting and everything. I do have a lot of hopes for Mike Leake to really bounce back. He's number 5 on the depth chart, and I think he can really improve. There's a lot of he still has a long road ahead of him for his MLB career. He can really get back. He can really get back into the 2011 form in 2013.
Yeah, and if he can do that, then the Reds have 5 really solid starters. In the bullpen, we're going to profile 3 guys. Now, Aroldis Chapman's going to end up being the closer, and I like that move a lot. I think that he's been a beast as a closer so far. He has the type of stuff with the ability to throw the ball 105 miles an hour that he should be a closer. He fits the mold. He did a great job. So I say just don't move him at this point. The one thing that I don't like about that, though, is that the entire spring they've stretched his arm out to try and make him a starter. So I think that could have some negative impacts on him this season. We'll see. I'll get more in depth with Aroldis Chapman in a second. The 2 guys I'm going to preview first are Sam LeCure and Jonathan Broxton. Starting with Sam LeCure, this is a guy that was once a middle mop-up type reliever, and ever since we had him on our show in an interview, Sam LeCure is really one of the nicest people we have ever interviewed. He has really picked his career up. Last year, a 3-3 record with a 3.14 ERA, 57 total innings, 48 games. He's become a solid middle reliever, setup man type. And then Jonathan Broxton, who they acquired during the season last year. Broxton was once a guy that the Dodgers had high hopes for early on as a very good setup man. Never worked out as a closer, and his career fell off for a while. But last year really found it with the Kansas City Royals, saving 23-27 for them. And then the Reds picked him up down the stretch last year, and I really like that pickup. They signed him to the extension this year, and he's a solid setup man for Aroldis Chapman, who, again, Aroldis Chapman, 38-43 saves last year, 1.51 ERA. He can throw the ball hard. I think he continues to work on those secondary pitches, and long term, he's going to be a very good closer.
Oh, I think Aroldis Chapman, it's going to surprise a lot of you guys. I actually think Aroldis Chapman should be in the starting rotation. This guy has nasty stuff. I think Jonathan Broxton should be, the team's full-time closer. I think that Aroldis Chapman, he is young. He does have starting pitcher, talent. He came over from Cuba, and he actually did, he is a starting pitcher in the Cuban team. But coming over to Major League Baseball, I think the Reds are actually using him wrong. I think this guy has the extended to go longer in innings, except just 1 inning. No, this is a guy who can go out there and reach 100 miles an hour on multiple occasions, on multiple pitches, and it's just phenomenal that he can continue to hit up in those triple digits. It's phenomenal that he's actually doing that. I'm not going to sit here and just I'm going to praise everybody in this bullpen. This is phenomenal bullpen, which features Sam LeCure, a guy we've had on the show. Sean Marshall, a guy who they brought over from the Chicago Cubs. He's going to provides a lot of depth over there in the bullpen. You got Jonathan Broxton, Jose Arredondo, Hoover, Nick Maston. I like this bullpen a whole lot. There's a lot of depth in it. It is very, phenomenal. I love the top four guys like Kieran, Marshall, Broxton, and Chapman. Good work overall for the Cincinnati Reds, really developing that bullpen.
Yeah, it's a very, very good bullpen. Now, Justin, overall, this is a very good team. And they're a team that won 97 games last year without Joey Votto for the whole season. Johnny Cueto had some injury problems down the stretch. And you would tend to think that with the addition of Jonathan Broxton for the full year, that this would be a team, and Shin-Soo Choo, that this would be a team that would only improve on the 97 games they won. But I gotta say, without the ability or without playing the Astros as many times as they did within the division, I think that they won't quite win as many games as they did last year. I think 94, 95 wins will be more than enough to win this division. They may even be able to rest starters down the stretch because this is one of the easier divisions in the game right now. I think the Pittsburgh Pirates are probably the team we see second in this division, and I think that's by at least 7 or 8 games that they are below the Reds by. So this is a team that will win the division, and people are talking about the Nationals and the Giants and the Dodgers, but the Reds top to bottom, if Matt Latos continues to pitch or get better, or Aroldis Chapman stays solid as his closer, this is a team that could legitimately win the World Series or at least win the NL.
Yeah, I agree a whole lot. I think the National League has a bunch of, highly ramped up teams. You got the Braves, the Nationals, like you mentioned. You ran down a whole list of them. But looking at the NL Central alone, the division did lose the Houston Astros, who's just a sitting duck in that division every single year in and year out. This Houston Astros squad lost 100 games year by year. And with the Cincinnati Reds, this team just continues to improve. Like I said, with the phenomenal bullpen, with the phenomenal hitting, with an up-and-coming prospects, this team continues to improve year in and year out. Joey Votto leading the charge for this team. I have them in first place. Like I said earlier on in the video, this team is going to be phenomenal. It's going to come down to, it's going to be a really head-to-head battle between them and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really, if A.J. Burnett can, have a good solid season, can McCutcheon repeat what he did last year, it's going to be a big competition for the Cincinnati Reds against the up-and-coming Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, it's going to be a great season to watch. We'll have it all covered here on The Real Sports Talk. Please subscribe. Check out the other previews we've done at youtube.com/Mr. Kelstar. I'm Tim Kelly for Justin Godsey. We'll see you guys next time.